that turn yet again.
We are live.
Keeps on spinning.
Maxed out wizard powers.
Okay.
Maxed out all my stats.
That link is out. So's that
Okay.
one.
Hang on a second here.
And that one.
Is there any reason you posted that picture?
Because I had that picture and I don't know what else we're going to... Because I'm going to do another Twitter post when we actually get into the main topic.
Fair enough.
And that one as well. And that one.
You know, considering the topic we're talking about, I'm wondering if that would make a great episode of Law and Order.
Oh, that's one I forgot. The doink doink. It's not on the new soundboard.
Ding, ding.
Don't worry, it'll come back. So, okay. I'm ready when everybody else is ready.
Okay.
Yes, indeed. Ready for a segment in 3.
Sound like a dog in the background.
Yeah, what the hell?
3, 2. Welcome to NTR Radio. I'm Tom Force Anubis.
I'm K-Gods.
And I'm VZ Mark II.
Maury is here.
Hey, guys.
So how is everybody?
Good. All right.
Okay.
Good.
We're going to try to go through this first segment kind of quickly because the main topic is, well, you'll see.
Yeah, the main topic is a doozy, so we're going to try and have a nice lean first segment.
Okay.
So,
I
ain't watched shit. What do we got?
I want to apologize for my performance last episode. I was actually pretty under the weather, but I did it anyway because I was...
You're a trooper.
Yeah, there you go. We'll say that. I did watch some stuff.
Yeah, I saw on your Twitter.
From this season, I started watching Girly Air Force. That's pretty fun. I mean, if you like Strike Witches or anything like that, or
does it get better after the first episode? Because I
think so.
Really?
It might just not be your cup of tea, though.
Yeah, it didn't look good. Not the concept, but the presentation. Just
fair enough. But I enjoyed it. I like the vibe of it. And the other thing is, eventually people wore down my nerves, and I actually did started watching Shield Hero, which actually does play into this topic very well later.
Mm.
Yeah, incidentally, yeah.
Yeah.
And how are you liking that?
It's fun. It's got some nice backgrounds and music and stuff, but I think the writing could use some work. Especially with the main character, because it doesn't feel like there's any real reason he should even bother. Because
it's not as good as like Goblin Slayer.
Nah,
no,
I don't think so. And he's basically got no real reason to help these people. I mean, really.
See, I think if you're gonna watch the fancy show this season, you really should watch Endro, because I'm surprised. You've played more JRPGs than me.
Okay, right? Well, again, if you really want my opinion, I just don't have a lot of time anymore.
I that's all right. But I'm just saying, I think that's a show that you would at least get some amusement out of.
But I'm enjoying them. I'm about 3 episodes each in on them. They're not obviously not bad enough for me to stop. So that's a positive, I would think.
Okay, so the stuff I'm watching. So they know I'm only watching 3 shows this season, very light. And they're all pretty much like in that category of like 4 out of 5, where I don't have a clear winner as to what the best show is this season. But I'm still watching them. I'm still enjoying them for what they are. And that is, as I said, Endro. The other is Wata 10, which is the Lolicon show.
Yeah.
Doga Kobo. And the other one is How Clumsy Are You, Miss Uno?
Which title.
Yeah, well, that's the one I got our friend Sneaky hooked on.
You wouldn't have had to. He would have sniffed that one out.
Well, I know, but I was showing him. I showed him a cap because he wasn't aware until he.
And yes, that was on purpose.
Yes. So besides that, I actually did watch something else that because I have like a bunch of stuff on my
hard drive.
Yeah, stuff I haven't watched in a long time that I rewatched, and things that I haven't seen that I want to see. And anyway, one of the things I wanted to talk about was so I saw Mazinger Z Infinity, or Mazinger Z Infinity, as they actually say. It was actually pretty good. It was better than I was expecting.
What year did that come out?
2017.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say that's a new one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Surprisingly entertaining. I was, because of my initial reaction based on that trailer was I wasn't gonna like it too much based on the 3D CG wasn't as egregious to me as I would have thought it would have been. I mean, I still prefer 2D mecha, but for what they were trying to, in my opinion, what they were trying to achieve was similar to what they were trying to do with Gundam Unicorn. Not Unicorn, sorry, Origin.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Where they wanted to keep that high amount of detail,
right?
And have it
did
be
they
animated well.
When did they do it? The episodes with that level of sort of attention, or was it like?
Well, it's a movie, so.
Oh, okay, it's a movie. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. It's not my favorite.
I actually like the Mazinger franchise. How come I didn't hear about that?
Well, it is coming out here by Viz. It actually just came out.
Okay, so something will go wrong with it then. It's Viz.
It's not my favorite Mazinger thing. My favorite Mazinger thing is Mazinkaiser.
Yeah, I actually agree with that.
That's like my high point.
The skull thing?
No, not skull.
Okay.
Just regular Mazinkaiser from 2001.
Yeah, I remember when that came out. It was one of those sort of, if you kind of miss older style stuff.
Yeah, the thing was, I first saw it when ADV Anime was coming with New Type USA.
All right, so
that's how I first saw it.
Mm-hmm. I seem to remember the guys from Colony Drop actually liked it a lot.
Oh, well, they probably would, because it is very it's very masculine. It's very hyper.
Well, yeah, but that's back then. Now they're actually acting pretty woke. So.
Oh, whatever.
Which is kind of funny.
Yeah. No, but I do recommend Mazinger Z Infinity to try it out. It's not long at all, by the way. It's only an hour and a half, so you're not gonna waste that much time watching it.
Right.
I actually did get something in the mail real fast. Okay. Not surprised that I got this. I got the Chinibo movie. Just came out. Looks really nice.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I just found out that it comes with is a cut-up film strip from the movie.
Interesting.
Yeah, and
they always come up with some of the strangest sort of extras in these type of deals.
It's the part when Yuta is meeting Rika together.
You can't see me, but I'm smirking right now in a way that's probably inappropriate.
Oh.
But not anime related, but Mori will probably like this. Earlier today, I was actually watching a documentary on Hideki Tojo.
Oh.
Yeah. There's his nickname is the Razor. Gotta love that. He was a pretty fucked up guy. I mean, he signed off on Unit 731, basically. That's all you need to know.
That Tojo. Okay.
Yes. And basically, the way he sort of maneuvered himself as a chess piece up to where, outside of the Emperor, he pretty much was the Iron Hand of Japan.
Also, the only one that got reprimanded. after all that.
Well, he tried to kill himself.
Being at the top, that would have happened regardless.
Right.
Right. You lose the war. That's, and he did try to kill himself. He wasn't really a good shot, and he tried to shoot himself in the heart, but he just kind of missed, and they actually revived him and then, executed him a couple years later. But they were pointing out how just all kinds of fun little things outside of Unit 731. You also had the rape of Nanjing and Nanking, however, which way you want to say it, depending on your dialect.
Was this on the Smithsonian Channel or History?
No, none of the above.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, it was pretty entertaining, in the sense that it gives you sort of an inside look into how that sort of the imperialist Japanese mindset was. I mean, because this is a guy who flew over to Germany before even World War I think, started. I could be wrong on that. I couldn't remember the exact date, but he liked the sort of Prussian militarism.
Certainly they copied their uniforms and a lot of their ideas about military organization.
Right.
From Germany. They wanted to be, after getting in border skirmishes with Russia for many years, they wanted to copy what was good about the West and, and advance as a society.
Become an industrial military power.
Well, and they did succeed in doing that. They succeeded admirably in doing that. It's just that at that point, so interestingly, there had been, up to that point, a pretty interesting collaboration between futurists, for lack of a better word, in China, in Korea, in Vietnam, and in Japan. They were trying to create a pan-Asian movement. Yeah. But at some point, some of these Japanese officials decided, well, we're so much more advanced than these guys, then rather than just peacefully try to negotiate and build them up, it would be much easier to build all of Asia up by force.
Mm-hmm. And they were talking about how, of course, this is where the whole, Asian, what was it called? Co-prosperity sphere?
Something like that.
Something like that, where...
Asian Prosperity Cooperative, I think.
Or something like that. I couldn't remember exactly.
Now we just copy made uniforms from the Victorian era.
Yeah.
Much better thing to copy.
Well,
everyone gets happy.
Well, the main reason the expansion, or at least that he was able to talk people into doing it, was for resources, oil and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know that's what Pearl Harbor was about.
Well, it's also why they tried to take Singapore and all that.
Yeah.
A lot of the theories were based on, there is a valid Japanese martial arts theory that, he who strikes first, if you can strike a decisive blow, wins the fight.
Right.
And they said, well, China is not really our friend, and they got a lot of people, but they're completely technologically 50, 60 years behind. There were a lot of interesting newspapers in Japan where they sort of mocked the idea that, a lot of the Chinese officials would wear robes from in the style of 200, 300, 500 years ago. Whereas Japan was trying to modernize, they wore Western suits, or at one point they wore German military uniforms, or German style, I should say.
And they saw this thing and it was sailor suits. Quick, we got to copy that. Give it to our schoolgirls now.
Yes.
I'm just being a dick.
Although ironically, or maybe not ironically, but I should say
that.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. One of the things they did do, the suits and stuff like that. More than anything else, they actually grabbed a lot of that idea from Germany as well. The whole school uniforms and all that. Because that whole idea was hardly a new thing.
So I've said this before, but I feel a lot of the importation of ideas from Europe to Asia, and I'm generalizing beyond even just Japan here, but certainly this is applicable to Japan of that era. It was a way to get certain ideas that was not quote unquote tainted by association with an already existing power that they'd had strong feelings about. And I'll give you an example of exactly what I mean. The Qin dynasty, the early Chinese dynasty, had a very militaristic society that could be compared in some ways to Prussian militarism. But no one in Japan at the time wanted to say, let's copy the ancient Chinese. That was not something that was acceptable. So
it probably would be a more...
when they saw it, and again, China was also, you know, they were still operating these junks, which were sailboat technology and stuff from 500 years ago. And so it was seen as faintly ludicrous to copy China in matters of technology or military or, you know, social organization or any of that.
Well, so the West had electricity and, you know.
Well, yeah, the West was able to show up with warships and basically crush everyone who didn't have modern warships.
Right.
That's why the West spent all this effort building those warships.
Well, not only that, but the nationalism aspect of it probably prevented them from wanting to copy what was probably in their minds a rival. You're exactly right. And so obviously there's differences between Prussian militarism and ancient Chinese militarism, which we don't need to go too much into, but just the point of it is if they really just wanted to copy a militaristic society where, for example, every male above the age of 16 was assigned a military rank, they'd been doing that in China in certain dynasties for many, many years. But it was distasteful to copy, say, the Koreans or the Chinese or any of that, because they wanted to be ahead of those people. And so discovering that Prussia had this sort of thing going on, they could wholeheartedly throw themselves into it. There was no cultural threat because they were copying a culture on the other side of the world. Okay, so that's going to be your little history lesson for the moment.
Yes, indeed. VZ, you hit up anything else?
No, I was rewatching because I haven't seen it in years. So you know how a couple of months ago, I was rewatching Ixer 1.
Yeah.
Well, I was rewatching both Ixer Reborn, or Adventure Ixer 3 as originally was known, and Ixer Leon.
I just like the name of that.
Yeah, they were both the sequels that are they're okay. They have some good points, but they're not on par with the original.
Yeah, I mean, I have Ixer 1.
Same here.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about so many of these things from like the 80s and early 90s that like the first entry is the best, and then just like steadily like when it like decline.
That's also just a general thing you see in a lot of OVAs, period, including hentai.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Because like what's the best over Fiend, the original?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Okay, well, I've only seen the first and the second one. You know?
Yeah, because it gets actually considerably more screwy. Which, if no pun intended.
I've read some crazy things that gone on.
Yeah, it like if you thought the first two OVA chunks were messed up, it actually gets much, much more so.
But there was like Project Geico. The first one is excellent, but then the others kind of lose steam. Although I like the one.
Although that's not always true. I mean, like Bubblegum Crisis or something like that. I mean, it's pretty good across the board.
Well, that's more of a like. That's different because those were more like episodes. The others were more like.
I see what you mean. Those are more like projects.
Yeah.
Rather than episodes. I got it.
Yeah, like the best, excellent example I also like to bring up is, even though I know you haven't seen this, is the Golf Force series. The first one is excellent. Then it's like 2 or 3 are okay, but at the same time forgettable. I actually have a light affinity for the fourth one, mostly because it reminds me of Terminator in a lot of ways. And by Terminator, I mean like the future of the Terminator world. You could definitely see that they took it from that. But then after that, it just went off the rails, and like I don't even remember what happened in those. That's how. But yeah, a lot of those things are like that, and I'm trying to figure out what the phenomenon of why sequels like that happen that just can't live up to the first one. I think it's because they put their best ideas in the first entry. That also like the height of the that not just the bubble economy, but like the OVA rental scene. They were given a lot of money to put in like extra animation and such.
Okay. Well, all right. With that, we're probably going to take a break here.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
So we're up against the Breakkeeper right here on NTR Radio. All right. Let me.
Okay. Everybody's seen the Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers thing, right? Where they're doing the arm lock.
Yes.
You know that meme?
Yeah.
Check this one out. This is pretty funny. I'm gonna pop it into the chat.
It should be funny.
It's true. I mean,
I'm saving that.
Yeah, I think I might as well.
I've been meaning to do one of my own because I have a great one that's like.
Yeah, I mean that's an easy one to work with.
All right, I'll be right back.
So, Maury, have you been paying attention to like this stupid Catherine thing?
Is there yet another controversy involving Catherine? Because it seems to happen every 6 months or so.
Yeah, I mean, like, basically a bunch of people from that idiotic forum reset era basically lied about it and made some big stink about it, and it snuck out before everybody was supposed to see it or whatever. And it's just
Catherine is supposed to be provocative. It's very easy to misinterpret something, especially nowadays, where they try to make it provocative so that people will be curious and go see it, but
I'm trying to find exactly the specific picture I had in mind here.
See, I don't get that. Why something can't be provocative? Why is,
because
for the very same reasons that you have things like Steam removing everything with a Confederate flag in it, including actual battle reenactments of the U.S. Civil War, which are not endorsements of one side or the other. They're just, hey, this was the flag this unit used.
This occurred.
Yes. But that's offensive because people cannot, and this is a huge point of argument inside the young adult fiction world too, where people say, okay, like let's say an artist portrays slavery or rape or homophobia or whatever, that tells you nothing about the artist's personal beliefs or the writer's personal beliefs. It just means that this particular character of theirs, they feel is racist or homophobic or biased against poor people or whatever, because they have character flaws.
Yeah, that's like nobody's allowed to have character flaws. They're all supposed to be perfect.
Well, but the result is completely boring and uninteresting and flat writing because people are not interested in robots with no character flaws. That's just not good writing.
So that's the whole thing is like, if these people wrote characters the way all these idiots are telling them to write characters, those people wouldn't like them either. It wouldn't be
no, and you see that in comics where every once in a while they listen to a bunch of people who spam online polls and they produce this super intersectional character, but they don't actually flesh out a thoughtful personality. Yep. They've not asked, does this person ring true as a real world person I could see meeting on the street or in my comic book shop or wherever? And then people are just not that interested in the character because the character is flat and not like a real person. and then they get upset, and it's a whole to do, and then they argue like, oh, the troglodytes are causing us to cancel this new brave intersectional series, and it's like, no, well, what part of that is you not having written a very realistic emotional character that people could relate to as a human being?
Exactly. So when people listen to these people, bad media ends up getting created, and
not only that,
poorly, and then people wonder why it does poorly, and people wonder why. And then,
so I said this once before. Probably one of the most successful transgender characters in film is Switch in The Matrix, because her personality is not about, they don't smack you repeatedly upside the head with the fact that it's a transgender character. When you think of Switch, you think of this scene where she goes, not like this, not like this. And you see that she's a warrior, and she wanted to go out guns blazing. She wanted to go out with her boots on, and she wanted to fight the good fight. And she was willing to die, but she didn't want to die because of being stabbed in the back.
Exactly.
And that's instantly very humanizing. It's tragic, but it's very humanizing, and it gives you a real sense of, okay, this is what resistance fighters are like in this horrifying future. Is like, they're willing to die for humanity, but they didn't want to be stabbed in the back by another human. They wanted to go out in a blaze of glory, guns blazing against the agents or the robots or whatever. So that's great, because yes, the character of Switch is largely defined by a couple of details. And, one of them is wearing white. One of them is being, conceiving of herself as a woman. So she's a woman in the Matrix, but, she's a guy biologically in the real world. They didn't really get to cover that. They had to cut that because of the flow of the scenes was not right, and the pacing was just not going to be good. But it works because it is not 100% just this is a transgender character with no relatability or identity outside of that.
Right.
It was just another human being first and foremost, and they happened to be someone who thought of themselves as female. And it worked much, 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 much better because that's the way that came out after all the edits. And I think that people don't grasp that, even though they point to Switch as an example of like, yeah, it's awesome that this character existed and everything. It's like, but have you guys thought about how this worked out being a really sympathetic character that people liked?
Check this out. Breaking 911 news. Ex-Congressman Anthony Weiner has been freed from federal prison. You know what that means. The Willie has been freed.
Okay, let's get back to the show before.
I couldn't resist.
Okay. Actually, let me write down the number so I don't forget.
Now, I'm sure nobody wants to know his number now.
In 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to NTR Radio.
Hey!
So, for our main segment, we're basically going to do an extended Let's News. So, we have the news drop in coming to you right now.
Let's News! Working to restore power.
So, there have been several situations going on, all revolving around the American voice actor Vic Mignogna. Played Edward Elric in Fullmetal Alchemist, Broly in the recent Dragon Ball
Super movie. Yeah.
Dragon Ball Super. And so the long and short of it is that Funimation is not going to be working with him after this one project. And
same with Rooster Teeth.
Rooster Teeth is not going to be working with him anymore. And what I want to do before we dive into this is tell everyone how we got where we are, because this is much more of a process than a lot of people on this topic understand.
Plus, it'll put context to everything that's going on.
Exactly. But before I do that, I'm going to tell people how to get involved with the show. So what you do is you go to ntrradio.net, you click the chat link, that'll bring you to the page, you enter in your nickname, hit the button, and join us in the IRC channel. Alternatively, take your favorite IRC client, point it at irc.ryzen.net, and join us in the #SLC media channel. In addition, we are on Twitter at TAnubis, at VZMK2, at Immortal_KGods, at NTR Radio. And as always, the email address to get involved with the show is ntrradio@gmail.com.
He's working on that auctioneer sub job.
So about a month ago, so that would be the middle of January, there was a big blow up on Twitter over a person by the name of Hazukari.
You may or may not have heard of this individual.
So Hazukari is he's basically an ascended rando. He doesn't really have much presence outside of any Twitter, other than the fact that he does some convention panels and also does some writing for ANN, and has been on a whole bunch of podcasts about anime and whatnot. But he fell in with some people in the ANN crowd, and was in attendance at various secret ANN parties that happen at conventions, apparently.
Yeah, that's one thing I needed to point out there. This apparently isn't just a conspiracy theory or whatnot. This was actually something that apparently really did happen.
Yeah, apparently. So, he's out here rubbing noses with Miles from Crunchyroll. That isn't a joke either. There's the photo is of him rubbing noses with Miles from Crunchyroll.
I'm glad I haven't seen that.
So
just pointing that out there.
So in the middle of January, it had come out that Hazukari goes around to conventions, basically grooming teenagers for grooming and sexually assaulting teenagers. So when that blew up, it became this whole big thing, and ANN, who Hazukari had done a lot of work with, cut ties, as they should have, and also deleted all of Hazukari's contributions on their site, which is questionable whether or not they should have done that. But what precipitated from that was a big... And this flares up every now and again, how there are a lot of very unsavory people that inhabit fandom spaces,
or even hang out on kind of the periphery of them, for that matter.
Right, and the reason they do that is because fandom spaces make it easy for them to prey on people and to victimize people. But so this comes up as a topic of discussion every now and again, and usually dies down within a couple of days. But this one in particular lasted quite a bit longer because of this person's connections. So one thing that ended up happening off of that was we got a spreadsheet list of various problem people.
Right, and it was roughly what, about 50 or so?
I'm looking at it right now. It's down. It's actually more up to the high 70s, like 77.
Right, but originally it was around what, 40 something, 50 something.
Yeah.
When it first kind of entered into the ether that is the internet.
I would say the pivotal point was you already had all these people who were mad about Hazukari, and
sure,
that was sort of resolved because there was a very graphic. Someone put up a very graphic Twitter thread about their personal experience of basically him getting her drunk and then her waking up. I don't want to go too much into it. It was very graphic.
Yeah.
So,
right. And not only that,
then they were mad at him, and basically everybody said that's inexcusable, and everybody cut ties with him. But they didn't feel like they had won a true victory against the patriarchy, because, to be honest, he's not a very high-ranking guy, even though he was sort of ubiquitous at a lot of these events.
See, I never heard of this
like
guy
he was
before.
some kind of
I have
CEO or big shot.
Yeah, well, again, he like I said, he's an ascended rando. He's
right.
a guy who was big on Twitter, and had gotten in with the ANN crowd. And that's and realistically, in such a small space as the anime community, that's all you need.
Right.
So what happened next is that people said, "Oh, well, you guys will go after Hazu and get all of his stuff deleted, get him fired, whatever, but you won't go after the real. Everybody knows that Vic has been. There've been bad rumors about him for years, but you guys don't have true courage, and you won't go after him because he's like a bigger name." And they were like, "Really? Who's this guy? Let us at him," because they were mad still, and they needed someone to take it out on.
Right,
I'm not, I have no idea. I don't claim to know the truth of these rumors one way or the other, but it is a fact that there were rumors. They didn't just make
absolutely. I mean, we even mentioned them, I think, on previous podcasts years ago. These rumors were circulating sort of around.
So to continue, I posted a link in the RC is brokenstaircase.info. This is the list, and what the creator says is, okay, please don't use this list for vigilantism and to get back at people.
Yeah.
There's no controlling for that. So,
spoken like someone who has never been on the internet before.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously. Like that's either, I don't even know if they're just outright.
It's what we call plausible deniability, in that in a court of law, like, well, I explicitly told everyone not to do this.
Right.
Yeah. All I did was create all of the apparatus to make this very, very easy, and then told people not to do exactly what is made very, very easy by
Your Honor. I have only created the situation where if somebody sneezed, a button would be pushed and there would be nuclear war. I never actually pushed the button.
Right. It's like it's like these two people have cannons about to shoot each other. Hey, I only gave them matches. I didn't. Anyway,
let me see any other names that I recognize.
Me neither. Which is good on my end.
Right, but we should point out something interesting that actually happened as soon as this thing flew out, which is that Justin Vegas, somebody put him on it.
Yeah. Okay. So the next thing that happened was Justin Vegas of Anime News Network ended up on this list, and this is I'd like to call it the culmination, but we actually don't know. But I was the latest in a very, very long ongoing, apparently, false accusation campaign against him by one person whose name doesn't matter.
No.
But it just goes to show immediately
this thing's slow to load.
Someone who was innocent ended up on this list.
This is what I'm going to say. There is a continuing strain of, I'll just call them problems in politics, where people formulate policies or ideas that they personally would never abuse, and they love to assume that nobody else would ever abuse it just because they personally find it unthinkable that someone would abuse this process. So you have all these arguments between, hundreds or even thousands of people about, like, well, how can you believe that someone is lying? This is such an important thing. Don't you think that with someone's life, or livelihood at stake, that they would be very careful with this kind of power, and there wouldn't be false accusations. I can show you studies of the false accusations of rape in the Civil War, back when everyone took a woman's honor way more seriously than we do now. And literally there are women who on their deathbed were like, yeah, I said that, this whole platoon from the North manhandled me, tore my clothes off, and had their way with me, but that's just because I hated the Northern invaders and I wanted to contribute my might to the extermination of the Yankees. So this is a very old, ongoing behavioral pattern. Again, not everyone does this, but if you're going to say, does no one do it? No, and for hundreds of years, this has happened. So, you create a system. Some people are going to try to game the system to get what they want, and sometimes what they want is not very nice.
And with respect to a list like this, it's a fundamental failure to understand things about fandom culture that can get incredibly petty.
Oh yeah,
for least reasons, and people will escalate it to the highest possible level they can.
There was a man shot by the police because he was swatted because he was trading insult with someone on, I think, a Call of Duty game, and the guy somehow found out his address because his handle had his real name or something like that in it.
Something like that. Yeah.
That's actually not the whole story. The guy who was shot was completely uninvolved.
Wasn't it like somebody? Yeah, wasn't it somebody that was like not even playing the game or something?
This is, and I know this by heart because it's some shit that legitimately angered me. It was Call of Duty. It was like and it was a bet of some pittance of money, like $1.50 or something like that.
Some shit change.
And what one person got mad, I think it's because they lost the bet, and found an address, or either found an address or the other person gave them a wrong address. Anyway, the police were called, and the police were called to a crisis situation at that address, and a dude opened the door who lived at that address, and long story short, the police shot him, and he was completely uninvolved. He didn't know what was going on. So, make no mistake, fandom culture does escalate things to a ridiculous level for no reason, and this happens quite often. Not to that extent, not to the extent where people are getting shot and killed, but fandom culture routinely blows things out of proportion and escalates things to a level where they didn't need to be escalated.
Oh, you're absolutely right, but I don't even know that I would say that's just fandom culture either.
Oh,
because
no.
on the other side of it, you have outrage culture, which constantly
just wants pound your flesh, regardless who it is.
You know, everything. Someone looked at you the wrong way, and now you're reporting them for a mini rape when, in fact, they never touched you.
Mini rape,
and here's
grossly inappropriate. And you've every right to be offended, but to call that rape is, we're going into another dimension here.
When those two cultures intersect,
they are not two great tastes that taste great together.
Yeah,
it's not Reese's peanut butter cups by any means.
So continuing, Justin Sudeikis got put on the list, got taken off the list after it was found that was part of an ongoing campaign against him.
And he actually posted was it just one big one or a string of comments? I can't remember.
There was one that was like 4 images of all text.
Yeah, it's like some big sort of.
Yeah. And yeah, long story short, he had been part of an ongoing campaign of defamation against him. But what ended up precipitating from the Hazukari incident and Justin Sudeikis getting falsely accused was Bamboo Dong and Lindsay Loveridge of Anime News Network decided they want to do a series of pieces on some of the least elements of this fandom culture. And the first one they did was one on Vic Mignogna, who again is a voice actor,
pretty well known in the dub circuit.
Very well known in the dub circuit, very famous, very successful, very well liked by a lot of fans, and that's going to be a factor later on. So, and make no mistake, the allegations against Vic Mignogna have been known for a while, years.
Yeah,
they come up time and time again, but this is the one time where it's gotten to the level it's at now.
The cultural climate allowed it to get worse than it actually usually did.
Well, it was the cultural climate, and also
the recent Hazu bit.
Yeah, it's a snowball effect from the Hazu incident, from Justin Sudeikis, from this dumbass list.
Yeah, and trust me, this is just a really badly formatted list, if nothing else.
And well, here's the thing: make no mistake, I guarantee you that some of at least some of the people on this list are absolutely guilty, just from what I know about fandom culture and from what I know about how fandom culture makes it incredibly easy for people who are malignant narcissists, sociopaths, and have so little commitment to the culture that they're willing to do damage to people and do damage to the culture and people within it if it satisfies whatever they're after. I know what I know about fandom culture and how it makes it very easy to do that makes me certain that there are some of the people on this list are absolutely guilty. I'm not going to speculate as to who. I don't.
It's also a numbers game.
Quite frankly, I don't care. What I care about is how are we going to fix that aspect of the culture. But that's a discussion for later on. We're just still doing cleanup to get to where we are now.
Right.
So, and then puts out this article, and there's a very cynical element of there's a very cynical part of me that sees the fact that they're putting out this article now and the fact that they have been hurting for money for the past year or so as no coincidence.
Right. So basically sort of getting on the outrage clickbait sort of model.
Jumping on that because it drives to their website.
Yeah, exactly.
And it certainly succeeded in that aspect because a whole bunch of people went
completely ape shit,
went buck wild, and the Vic thing took off in a way that it hadn't taken off before. A lot of other voice actors decided to start chiming in. A lot of fans took one side or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a few content creators are again taking one side or the other. And what ends up happening is we get once companies start getting wind of this, and they don't want bad PR, is Rooster Teeth cuts ties with Vic. He's not going to be voice acting this character in Ruby anymore. And then Funimation goes and conducts an investigation and decides they're going to cut ties with Vic as well.
Right. And a couple interesting things about this. Some of the voice actors that are in-house Funimation voice actors and actresses, we should point that out.
Yes.
Have been going completely nuts on social media, saying a lot of really inflammatory and just outright insane things. Also, pretending they're lawyers.
Not for real.
You don't say names.
Oh, didn't know.
Yeah.
So
it's not necessary to name some of these people.
Because we don't want to give people a target.
Okay.
Well, it's really like the burning of the Library of Alexandria. You don't want to reward that behavior.
No, exactly. That's 100% correct. They're making all these weird assertions, and many of them, I think, are pretending they're LARPing that they're lawyers or something. I mean, because some of the stuff they say is like really bad legalese that's not true. Just outright.
Here's what I want to point out, and I'll turn it right back after I point this out. But
sure.
When someone, and I like that Anubis has pointed out that Funimation took the time to conduct an internal investigation, but unlike a legal, or rather I should say a judicial investigation where the question, the most pressing question is this person likely actually guilty and should we bring charges? The question in a big corporate investigation over a scandal like this is, which way are we likely to lose more money?
Right.
And so, I'm aware that Anubis knows this, but I just want to clarify that for anyone listening.
No, makes total sense.
That when he says investigation, when we say that a company has done an investigation,
they're like referring to their bottom line. It's like
Ford deciding whether or not they need to replace these brakes or just pay out some damages in lawsuits.
Right. And continuing on that, there are a lot of people on both sides going on about this investigation. And another thing I want to point out is that Funimation mentioned that they conducted an investigation. Number one, like Maurice saying, it's an internal investigation. And what that means is that we don't know if he's guilty or not.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we really don't know.
The fact that they conducted an investigation and found it and concluded that they should cut ties with Vic doesn't mean anything with regard to
if he did it or not. No. And
let me also make this clear. I have no dog in this fight.
No, me either. I'm more of a sub guy.
Out of the three main hosts of this podcast, I'm the most lenient guy on Dubs, and I really have no dog in this fight. And realistically, if these allegations are true, and for the most part, from what I understand, the allegations are for the most part that he is engaging in creepy behavior with fans. There have been allegations of him mostly it's he hugged someone inappropriately, or he kissed someone
in their ear or some shit
in their ear creepily, none of which is a crime. But if he's out here making fans uncomfortable habitually and doesn't stop and continues,
I'm gonna add some context. I want you to go on, but
continues doing that, knowing people are being made uncomfortable and hasn't stopped, then yes, he needs to be gotten the fuck up out of here.
Right.
But and I'm gonna drop some context on this.
Yeah.
Just I agree with what you said, but there are persistent rumors about a lot of real world politicians that amount to the same thing. Like Joe Biden at 1 year had a few complaints about him. Like a few really young girls came and wanted him to, he was vice president, and a few young girls were just excited to see him, wanted him to sign their shirts. And he was like, okay, well, I'm not going to sign it on your chest, but, I'll sign it on your belly or something. And people still thought, hey, that's kind of creepy. And, that kind of thing. So the point that I want to add is not about any individual's guilt or non-guilt, but just that this kind of complaint in politics is extremely common. And the existence, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of people Joe Biden met that year, but maybe it came across as creepy to some people. Maybe it was blown out of proportion. I really don't know. But my point is, if you interact with the public a lot,
you ever see the Joe Biden with the Love Live characters pasted on?
I have not.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I know I have, but I yeah. But anyway, to go back,
the point is just to understand the full context is to know that these complaints are fairly common against anybody who has some kind of high profile, be it industry or politics or whatever, and meets a lot of the members of the general public. I have no idea if Vic is guilty. I have no idea if Joe Biden is guilty. I really am not making any factual statement one way or the other, but I'm just noting that this is the sort of thing that pops up a lot. And if you're not aware that this is a very common complaint, just that someone was sort of like generically creepy, not that someone actually molested someone. As far as I can tell, like Anubis said, there are no actual substantive complaints that he is molested or raped or torn girls' shirts off and aggressily touched them or any of that. It would clearly be a crime. It's just he's creepy.
Well,
I didn't like my interaction with him.
The other thing you have to factor in is the fact that he's a Christian and all the others don't like that.
Well, that's exactly where I was just about to go.
Before we go to that, I was going to point out that part of the backlash you're seeing with some of these, the whole guilt thing, assuming innocent until proven guilty. Oh, that's only for courts, but that's such a torches and pitchforks mentality to bring that outside of onto the internet. You know what I mean?
Well, there's literally no other way they can operate at this point.
But do they not see that? Do they not see that that's no different than witch hunters?
Do they care?
If you want something to be true, suddenly your standards for proof become very low. That is generally true of humanity.
Listen, guys, they want their pound of flesh. It doesn't matter realize that. Whether or not I
get that. I get that. I completely understand that. I'm not. It's more of a rhetorical question,
Yeah.
So my take on all of this is that this is absolutely, as Anubis said, this is a feature of fandom, but it reflects a feature of society as a whole. Because, like I said, within fandom, there's Vic, there's Hazu, that sort of thing. But within society as a whole, there's Me Too. There's accusations of was it last year? There was a whole Roy Moore. All of these Republicans are creepy. Oh yeah, well, what about these Democrats? And then they were throwing it back and forth at each other.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, I have not delved enough into the details behind every case where I can say this guy was probably guilty, this guy was probably not guilty, and I don't care to. That's not my job. That's the job of a judge somewhere, a competent legal expert.
But the point is, they're weaponizing accusations.
But the point, even beyond, you're right, they are weaponizing accusations. But even beyond that, we live in a society where people don't have time to read the details on all of this and actually form anything remotely close to an informed opinion on whether people have done these horrible things they've been accused of. And statistically, as Anubis said, probably some of them have and some of them haven't. And who knows, in any individual case, it's impossible for the average person to be expected to sort out whether it's true or not true in any given case, because the average person is not a trial lawyer, they're not a judge, they're not a detective.
Right.
They're not trained to do this, but they want to pick a side. It's all very exciting. It's blood sports. It's theater. It's entertainment.
Yeah, it really is.
These are real people's lives.
Which is the problem.
So that's the unfortunate side of this. There's a really great quote from the Roman Empire.
I told you it was a history-related episode.
It's something I believe Cicero said, and he said there's a disease in this country, and it has turned everyone opinionated, and it does not respect elder versus junior rank. It does not respect familial ties. It does not respect growing up in the same neighborhood. None of the things that would hold people back, even from normal political, normally people can be political adversaries but still respect each other. All of that is gone. Everyone wants to wave the blue or the green flag. And what he was talking about was chariot races or gladiatorial sports.
Right.
But that sort of mob mentality, when everybody picks a side, it becomes not about the actual truth or falseness of the issue, but tribal. I want my team to win because I feel emotionally like I need a win in life.
It's tribal.
So if my sports team wins, or if the side I've chosen, people getting on Twitter and yelling, okay, I have, 1,400 followers, and if any of you are actually like, I stand with Vic, get the hell off my timeline. I never want to talk to you again. And some of these people have been talking to some of these other people for 5+ years. They greet each other. They say, how was your day? I'm really sorry about your bad day at work. And this is all being eliminated because somebody picked the green side and somebody picked the blue side.
Right. It's spiritual.
I'm not saying that, we shouldn't be outraged about this, sort of thing happening in general. Maybe you should. But do you really know what the truth is? Do I really know what the truth is? Do we have the ability to step back from these accusations and say, okay, well, you know what? I really hope someone gets to the bottom of that. If these accusations are true, they sound really nasty. But I do not presume to know the truth about these guys that I've never met and never will meet, probably, or have never met outside of like 5 minutes.
Is it not just basically picking a spiritual football team and running with it?
Well, it's worse than that. Everyone wants to be a hero, but no one wants to actually do what's necessary to prevent this from happening to other people. And that's my big thing about it. But continuing, because there was a good point made there. I think VZ was about to make it. Is that another thing Vic is being accused of is rampant homophobia.
Right.
Which I find curious, considering that
he just didn't want to sign Yowie fan art. That's
well, no, here's the thing. So looking back on this list, here you got the column of alleged misconduct, and going down here we have repeated sexual conduct with / abuse of minors. We got officially reported rapist and serving alcohol to minors, physical violence, sexual assault, predatory photography. But under Vic, and I haven't gone through this entire list, so I don't know for sure. But under Vic, you have homophobia and anti-Semitism, which I find to be a curious accusation compared to the rest of the list being full of rape and predatory photography and targeting young girls, sexual assault, predatory behavior.
Yeah, it seems really specific. Like
it's a very, very specific accusation, especially because it's in a fandom environment, which when we're talking about fandom environments, when we're talking about conventions and whatnot, there's a lot of acceptance of like alternate lifestyles, homosexuality, LGBTQ and whatnot, which I think is great, but I think it's interesting that Vic has this particular accusation.
We are very eager to believe that anyone who doesn't believe exactly what we believe is some sort of a horrible degenerate, or whatever label you want to apply. Bigot, I guess. Degenerate is something that the right call people. Bigot is something that the left call people. We're just eager to believe the worst of people who don't believe what we believe. But this is not a workable solution for a society that is actually going to cooperate with each other.
And on the inverse of that, we're inclined to believe that people who believe what we do believe
are better people.
Can't possibly be this horrible kind of person. Case in point with Hazakari, because he was one of these people who's out here.
He believed all the right things. How could he do that?
Yeah, he's out here moralizing other otaku, saying it's bad to do this and that sexually with anime. Turns out he's doing this and that bad thing sexually with people.
Joss Whedon turned out to be vocally pro-feminist for basically his entire career, but also cheating on his wife from basically like a month after they got married throughout like 19 years of his career. And that's sort of, I guess this happened even earlier. This happened, I believe, a year and a half ago. But it's sort of the general pattern within the larger pattern within society that I was talking about, where you have all these people who vocally pay lip service to one thing, and people want to believe that they're good people. I mean, Joss Whedon has, done some interesting things. A lot of people loved Firefly and all of that stuff. So they wanted to believe that he was a good person.
Right. But it also makes it easy for them to hide behind these labels while they
it's a very good way of putting it. And there's a very interesting statement in the study of organizations and how people advance within organizations. And it goes like this. Someone who cheats or fabricates credentials, in the absence of a really good method of testing the reality of credentials, someone who cheats or lies or fabricates is always going to get ahead. They're always going to have a leg up on the person who actually has the credentials, because it takes far more energy to actually put in the hard work and get the credentials honestly than to fabricate them. So by a similar principle, someone who lies about being really devoted to Christianity or to feminism or whatever cause that they want to align themselves with is always going to be able to come across at a superficial level as even better and greater than someone who is actually sincerely trying to be a good Christian or a good feminist or a good, eco-activist or whatever their cause is. The liars have a distinct advantage just because of how much energy is involved over the people who are true believers.
Right. Well, happened years back. Do you remember the BTK, the serial killer?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's a perfect example of this because he hid in plain sight. He was a pastor at a Lutheran church?
Yes.
I believe. Yeah. And that's part of why he was never caught for a long ass time. He actually did himself in with that. I think it was a floppy disk of all things. But the point was, nobody suspected him, and he was right out in public. And he was sort of preaching these values of being a good Lutheran and all this other stuff while he was doing all this stuff. And how are these people any different than that?
So, believe it or not, I think that paradigm plays directly into not just Hasukari, but a lot of the people who are jumping on the Vic Mignogna bandwagon now. Because, as I've said before, the allegations of him have been known for years.
Right. It is curious that they're all coming out immediately when it's opportunistic to do so.
And so a lot of people are coming out, jumping on this. Okay, we're trying to protect the fans from this predator when they've known about this stuff for years. When all this stuff has been spread around for at least half a decade. So I find it
and it wasn't an issue in the past.
It was an issue in the past, but not as big an issue. It wasn't treated as a serious issue in the past.
No, it was one of those things where, and I even heard somebody say this, I don't know how serious they were, that, I could tell you things about Vic.
And a lot of people are coming out saying, well, I've known this and that about the situation for years. So they're choosing now to come out about it. And
this is exactly the same. Who was the Hollywood director that everybody suddenly decided there were creepy stories about him for 30 plus years?
Weinstein?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
he's not a director.
Suddenly it's like, I'm going to speak out. This is what I know. And it's like, but you knew this 25 years ago, right? So do you get hero points for speaking out now?
Exactly. It's like, in some ways, you're actually a shitty person for this because you put your career in front of other people's safety.
Well, I don't know that I intend to join in on finger pointing about being evil, but it's certainly not something where you can claim a tremendous amount of virtue.
Don't pat yourself on the back.
It is convenient right now to dogpile this dude, and I've been sitting on this information for like 25 years. That makes you maybe a skilled opportunist, but not like some sort of moral saint.
No, you're not a hero. You're not a hero for coming out. And you're definitely not a hero for coming out now with the I'm trying to protect fans angle when you've known about this stuff for years.
It's the Jew Wario thing all over again.
If you're trying to keep the same energy at all times, you're not a hero if you waited years to now come out with protecting the fandom.
I absolutely agree. I think especially in the case of some of these people, in the Hollywood case, a lot of these people are multi-millionaires. I mean, they're worth 25 million, 30 million, 50 million.
Who knows?
They do not have the pressures. I can see a coherent argument that someone says, I knew about XYZ thing, but I would get fired from my job and I wouldn't have a place to live and I wouldn't be able to eat. And it was, I'm terrified because if I tattletale on this big company or something, if I make trouble for this big company, they can really mess me up. And that's a very different thing from realistically being in a place where very few people can actually get at you, and also deciding to just sort of sit on the information until you can score, you can hop on a bandwagon and put it out there. That's
right. And I mean,
that strikes me as being like, well, okay, that other person kind of has an excuse and you kind of don't have that excuse.
And realistically, maybe that's the case with this stuff on Vic Mignogna. Maybe it's the case that if so-and-so were to go public with this information or were to go and start telling, do the whole tell-all thing, say, okay, he's done this, and this at this time, in this convention, this place. I have this person who can confirm with me. Maybe, yes, something might have happened to them career-wise. And I understand that. And to a certain extent, I understand wanting to protect your career in that way. What I don't respect, because Kool and the Gang, if that's what you want to do, if you want to protect your career that way, I actually can't blame you for that. because you're not one of these Hollywood people with millions of dollars. You're working in the anime. You're working in the Western anime industry. You don't get to come out on the "I'm trying to protect people" bandwagon. You don't get to do that because you fundamentally haven't done that for years. Oh, you just happen to want to start protecting people
when you could get a cash payout.
Well, not even necessarily when you can get a cash payout. When the hammer has already fallen. When the most trusted anime news source has already done their expose on this person, and he's guaranteed to get dragged. Oh, yeah, so you want to come out? You want to come out there?
Well, that's
the whole thing now.
Of heroism now. We live in a very opportunistic time, and so that just I feel people's ideas about heroism have been distorted over time, and people's ideas about heroism are always sort of adjusted to the life and times they live in.
Right, but one common carryover is doing things that are hard in the face of, possibly a bad outcome.
Doing what's right versus doing what is going to get you paid the most money, or doing what is going to give you the most acclaim right now from society. That's the hard choice that everybody lives with, and that is usually what we think of as heroism. An interesting thing with Western heroism right now is that we have this sort of non-aggressive idea of a hero. We have this sort of idea that a hero is going to do all these great things for society but not have their own agenda, because that would be a little bit scary.
Right.
But this goes even further.
Lex Luthor.
Well, who's writing Lex Luthor is a huge component of whether he's a hero or a villain or just a jackass.
Just a bit of a joke, man.
No, I agree, but just putting that out there. There's many different interpretations of that character.
Sure.
The point that I want to bring this back to, though, is that it's our damaged sense of what is or isn't a hero that sort of allows people to lie to themselves and say, "Oh yes, I'm also, this guy is evil, therefore dragging him.
I'm helping.
Righteous, therefore I'm doing this righteous thing, therefore I'm a hero."
Shouldn't that be basically just a slogan for a lot of these outrage mobs? I'm helping. And while they're sitting there swinging.
They sincerely believe they are helping.
Well, here's the thing. We're talking about the people who are jumping on board with the Vic bandwagon.
It's Coney 2012 all over again. But I'm clicking on something, and therefore I'm a hero. I'm a virtuous person because I disapprove of child slavery in Uganda, and I'm clicking on this to let you know, so I'm a good person. You should praise me.
So here's the thing. We're talking about the people who are jumping on board, but there's reason to believe that same paradigm applies to the people at ANN themselves.
It's funny how that applies. I'm sorry, but I wanted to say. That it's funny how that applies to what we were talking about before the show about slapping on a box of cereal that says "Buy the cereal and save the rainforest."
Right. It's wanting to do something or appear to be doing something more.
I have an even funnier example. Lots of people, thousands of people gave money to I can't remember if it was a Patreon or a GoFundMe, for Kendall Jenner right when Forbes reported that she had 900+ million and was close to being the youngest female billionaire. I'm talking about someone who literally wears clothing that says filthy rich and clearly does not need more money the way that the average person who makes, let's say, 50K or less a year. If you are the average person in America or elsewhere in the world for that matter, you probably have much, much, much more important things to do with that money. And its impact in your life is probably much, much, much bigger than in hers. But thousands of people lined up to give their dollars to Kendall Jenner because they said it's going to elevate women everywhere to have this youngest female billionaire. And it's like, okay, but how?
Elevate an extra dinner of pork chops.
By what mechanism? By what mechanism does Kendall Jenner becoming a female billionaire a little bit faster greatly improve the lives
of Greta somewhere in
of women everywhere versus you taking that money, spending it on yourself, or let's say donating it to a homeless shelter, women's shelter, something like that.
Well, that's hard.
There was no logic in this calculation. They were just told, this symbol which you revere is tied to you doing this thing, and they went out and did that thing without any critical thinking.
No, it's lemmings going off of a cliff level of following around.
So ANN went out and did their big expose.
We should call it what it is, a hit piece.
It's a hit piece. They got it in their heads that we need to do something, and now is the time we need to do something, because
got to get that heat off of us because that Hazu shit.
Yeah, because one of ours turned out to be one of these people, and they decided to go on the whole heroism aspect. Now, what's very interesting is if you go back a decade plus, link posted in the IRC. This is an old Answer Man article, back when Zach Birchie was writing the Answer Man.
Okay.
And if you go down to the second question, I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of American voice actors at conventions during their panels, and they've all been really nice to fans. It's always nice to meet them. However, I have a question. I wonder if that is just an image that they put out so the fans don't feel insulted. Are American voice actors really nice like that when the fans are not around? Do you know any voice actors personally, and are they as nice as they are to the fans? Now, if you go down to, you see the line break, and then not the paragraph above that, but the paragraph above that one. BANS names redacted by the author himself, among others, are known for attempting to sleep with their fans at conventions. This is a common practice at most cons, anime or not, to be sure, but the aggressiveness of some of these people is legendary and particularly embarrassing. One was even known for specifically sleeping with a fan cosplaying as a character they played. Think of the psychological implications of that. So,
wait, what the fuck? I didn't know about this.
So back in 2007, they weren't interested in playing a hero and protecting fans from these sexual predators. No interest. Yeah,
I don't see, actually, if you think about it, how this is tremendously different from 18-year-old groupies who want to go to bed with Mick Jagger, even though he's like a fossil.
It's not.
And everyone's like, well, he's a rock star. Of course, he's going to sleep with some groupies. What's your problem?
It's not different. I think it's weird because there's no part of me that wants to sleep with listen, I'm an Asuka fan. There's no part of me that wants to sleep with Tiffany Grant. Listen, I met her at the convention. She signed my figure. She seems like a nice person, but there's no part of me that wants to actually sleep with Tiffany Grant because she played Asuka. That's weird to me. But listen, people bang people at cons all the time. Happens all the time. Yes. Guarantee you. But
holy shit. I mean, must they bring the Pomfing in 306 just to point out what's happening right next fucking door to my buddies?
Yeah, exactly. Listen, people want to sleep with famous people. Sure. Cool in the gang.
Or each other for that matter. Holy shit.
If said famous people are acting predatory in order to get some fan ass, then that's a problem. And like I said, they need to be gotten the fuck up out of here. But
I think the problem is that what you think is predatory in 1970, what is predatory in 1997, and what is predatory in 2017, those lines are A, non-distinct between different fandoms, and B, ever shifting.
Also, there is
I'm not saying there is not some degree that we could all say, okay, yeah, that's kind of
trying to get someone drunk and then get in their panties. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that we have a legal definition that says that that's not acceptable behavior.
Right.
Right. But you would still qualify.
In reality, there's a lot of, someone had one drink 4 hours ago. Legally, they're not considered drunk. They can drive a car. So,
that's not the same as them waking up and having buyer's remorse or something.
And
again, these things are very, very hard to judge from the outside.
Yeah. Well, and truth be told, there's no way to know the details, but what I'm saying is, back in 2007, it wasn't deemed appropriate to name these people, so they don't predate, in his own words, so they don't predate on other fans, so they're not aggressive in attempting to sleep with their fans at conventions, which Zach apparently thinks is a problem. But in 2019, right after,
but it suddenly becomes a much bigger problem now.
Well, it's suddenly something they want to do in 2019. Incidentally, just after they discovered that one of theirs was one of the people
he's talking about, basically.
I think,
who attempts to sleep with their
this is
fans,
something I wanted. I
quote-unquote,
didn't want to break in earlier when you said this, but you keep saying, "Oh, suddenly discovered one of theirs." But from what we know of organizational interactions, having that mentality or having that standard where you want only people who pay lip service to your ideals doesn't make it surprising that some of these people are predators or psychopaths or whatever. It improves the chances or increases the chances because of the interaction that you get where actual virtuous people are not skilled at lying to you about how virtuous they are. It's the predators or the psychopaths that are really good. It's the serial killers. The BTK pastor serial killer is really good at putting up a false front. And, because that's something he spent extra effort on because he's into it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though.
And having this be part of your core organizational filter for who you're going to have write for you, who you're going to have work for you, that sort of thing, increases the chances that someone, not everyone, but someone on your staff is going to be this kind of creep who's just really good at presenting a false image and paying lip service to your ideals of equal treatment between men and women or what have you.
Absolutely. And what I'm saying is, and realistically, okay, no, I was about to say something incredibly stupid, but what I'm saying is, glad I caught myself because that was going to be really dumb. But realistically, what I'm saying is, it's a surprise to them because they think that a lot of these qualities that they're screened for make a good person.
Inherently make them a good person.
Because it's so ingrained in the organization. So many of the high-level people in the organization have these same ideals. That, hey, I think so-and-so politically, I think so-and-so socially. That mean, and I'm a decent person. How could this possibly have happened?
It's a very comfortable lie that a lot of people get used to, that the way that I understand how to be a good person is either the best way or the most intuitive way or the most common way, or maybe even the only way to be a good person. And therefore, if I just look for people who pay lip service to the things that I think are markers of being a good person, then I'm sure to get good people.
Exactly.
Let me guess. Maury, you're good with economics and business stuff. These people are easy to swindle, aren't they?
I would not necessarily say so. I would say that, however, that
they're the used carsman's dream, though. Used car salesman's dream, in the sense that if you know how to pitch it to them.
If you believe that you are, let's say you're a member of a Christian sect, and you believe that no Christian would ever cheat you, you are going to get cheated. It's only a matter of time.
Yeah,
because there are a lot of people. All it takes is the claim that someone believes what you believe, and swindlers are swindlers because they at least think that they're very good at making this claim. Some of them are, some of them aren't. What have you?
Well, that's between a skilled one and somebody who goes out of business.
Right. So here's the thing, though, is everybody makes. This doesn't happen in a vacuum, and this is something that I want to point out. People have shortcuts, cognitive shortcuts, because you cannot go through life overanalyzing every last thing throughout the day. You will just get exhausted, and your brain will want to shut down at some point before the day is done. So we all have heuristics, shortcuts, stereotypes, call them what you will. We all make some decisions and we're like, well, that's probably okay. And the only, or the real difference between going through life a little more successful versus a little less successful is just, can you identify the really important things? Are you really thinking carefully if you have like $100,000 decision versus like a decision on where to get pizza tonight? And that's actually, like, it sounds really obvious when you put it like that, but sometimes the big decisions that turn out to be important are not obvious as big decisions when you make them. Like if you decide, oh, should I skip class today or whatever, but you weren't aware that the test was moved to today, skipping one class is normally not going to be a huge deal. Skipping the test is going to get you boned in that class, and you're going to have to drop it or fail.
So it's one of those things where sometimes, even with the most skilled and best of intentions, you'll still get bit.
Nobody's perfect. Nobody bats 1,000.
Nah.
And that's life. But, you know, we have, in our society, we've decided that certain shortcuts are okay and certain shortcuts are not okay. For example, you know, believing certain stereotypes about blacks, instantly not okay. You know, gonna get you fired, gonna get you blacklisted, all sorts of stuff. But believing stereotypes about, let's say, poor single white males that live in their mother's basements despite being 30, completely understandable and, you know, an acceptable stereotype to hold. So, you know, everybody has stereotypes, everybody has shortcuts in and beliefs that they want to hold to. It's just that until you realize the cost of thinking this way, or until someone, you know, gets together a large group of people to punish you for believing in a certain stereotype, like society generally does now with, say, racism or something, but that society generally does not do with, for example, believing bad things about incels or something. You know, it's just, either way, it's a stereotype, right? So what I view this corporate tendency to say, well, this guy says he believes in equal treatment with women, he's for women's rights, he's for equal pay, he's for all of these great sounding things.
I see what you're getting at.
The belief of that, you know, that's just one more stereotype that we haven't made socially unacceptable, and therefore people are using it as a shortcut to have to think about fewer things.
Sort of a Pavlovian, oh, they're okay.
A little bit, but it's just sort of, it's a systematic error, but it's the exact same systematic error as, let's say, you know, racial bigotry. It's just that we don't identify it as such, because one of these things is totally, it's the in-group thing to think, it's the right thing to think, it's okay, it's socially acceptable, and one of these things is absolutely abhorrent, only people from, like, you know, pre-1940 or whatever think this way, and they all better have changed their minds if they want to remain employable, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
fundamentally, though, they're both errors in thinking.
Right.
It's just
operating off the paradigm where
one of these errors is laudable and one of these errors is horrible.
Right. I mean, when you're operating off of that paradigm where if someone has certain political, social beliefs that you also hold, it means you have to vet people less, which played out over time will eventually get you someone who will eventually guaranteed 100% get you someone who is taking the funk, who's taken advantage of that.
Whether it'll be a usurper or just, you know, any kind of shenanigans.
Anyone who's going to take advantage of that for personal gain, to use the connection to you for personal gain. And I'm not even saying that Hazu went into this connection, wanted to get in with ANN and whatnot, so he could go on predating on.
I'll be real. I think this is just circumstance. I think the situation just allowed him to do it.
Yeah. Well, I
don't think he planned it deviously in the back of his head.
Yeah. I don't think this is one of those like plan. Oh, I'm gonna connect in with these people and then I'll be famous and I'll able to get underage ass all over the place. No, I don't think it's that. I think it's two separate things where, okay, I want to have clout in the anime community.
It's bisecting is what it is.
Yeah. I want to have
Well,
clout in
it's
the
opportunism.
and I also
like
want
I
to.
said, we now believe that heroes can or
shit.
should be opportunistic, as opposed to having, because having long-term principles that you adhere to is either hard or just robotic and seen as, it's not sexy.
That's an interesting way to say it. Yeah. But we should point out that
have you guys met Hazu, by the way?
No,
I have not, thankfully.
I have actually met Hazu.
I don't think I've been
more
in the
than
same
once,
convention
but
as him.
In a convention environment where there were 20 or 30 or 40 anime bloggers around, and he was just a frat bro, and I was kind of surprised at how vehemently left-wing a lot of his pronunciations were, given that basically he just came across as this huge frat dude.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you, going around the convention scene, there are, at least the conventions I've been to, there are a lot of people exactly like that
so you definitely want to keep an eye on them, probably.
No, I'm not saying keep an eye on them. But all I'm saying is that archetype is extremely common, where it's the frat bro personality out here in the hotel party, drinking up a storm, having a good time at the convention. But when they're talking politics, it's a lot of left-leaning stuff.
Well, that's because they want to win. They want to have their kicking it to seem like
I don't know
the winners on other.
Is it protective coloration, or rather, the camouflage that certain hunters put on?
I don't even think it's that. I think both of those aspects are genuine. Hazu just turned out, hey.
I don't mean that it's a conscious choice to. Well, okay, so for some of them, it probably is a very conscious choice.
I guarantee you, for some of them, just like some of the people on this list are guaranteed guilty. All I'm saying is, I think that it's weird that those two
you PC, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that it's weird that those two qualities intersect a whole lot, but I don't think it's anything malicious. There is.
I say that. No, okay, continue.
No, there is.
I would argue if you're not done going.
Well, there is a connection that I see between people who have that sort of very, very outspoken political leaning and them having a low level of commitment to the subculture and the fandom, and that I think is concerning. But I don't think that the frat bro left wing ideals thing is anything particularly concerning. Because again, I see that everywhere, and I don't think the majority of those people are predators. Anyway, Maury, you were on something?
A couple of things. First, how do I put this? Even if in some cases there is a conscious decision to present yourself a certain way and then take advantage of people's trust. Yes, there are scammers, there are con artists, people who do that, but the vast majority of people, like you said, don't do that. But even without consciously wanting to do that, if that is a successful strategy, particularly if that is a successful reproductive strategy, it will get copied because it works without necessarily people's conscious designs being that cynical.
I actually read something that basically said that the reason you're seeing these left-wing kind of dude bro kind of mentalities popping up are because it's an end for them, because otherwise they're really bad with women.
Well, what happens? Let's examine this for just a second. Let's go a little bit deeper. What happens in this day and age if you are, let's just say you don't believe, like, let's say in that men and women are equal. Okay. You get bitched the hell out. Job, work, church, whatever. Everyone, people are like, you can't say that. So what it is, when I refer to my earlier idea of protective coloration, it's just, you can train someone via the threat of just everyone being taken aback or, yelling at them or whatever. You can train someone to pay lip service to the right ideas. Actually changing someone's heart is a very different thing. And I think that we have not, we at some point, we probably knew this as a society, but we have forgotten it. Forcing everyone to pay attention, to pay lip service to certain ideals is not very different from having a state religion. And having a state religion, you then have to wonder, okay, but how many are sincere believers?
And how many people are just scared shitless?
This is just the state religion, and you learn over the course of your years growing up that these are the appropriate pauses, and you say these sentences, and that's how you pay lip service and appear to be a good person within your community.
Right.
We should point out that this isn't really the end of it, though, because then Todd Haberkorn comes into picture.
Yeah, and so there was, to my knowledge, one major accusation against Todd Haberkorn.
He tried to cut it off at the pass, but I think he just drew more attention to himself in a negative way.
Yeah, there's really no way you can come out in front of this kind of thing. So, quite frankly,
because he did the thing where he was all like, he's like, no, that sex was consensual before anybody even said anything.
Right. So, well, okay. So, Todd Haberkorn, and realistically, I haven't heard a whole lot about.
I haven't heard rumors about him ever, of any kind, good or bad.
Well, yeah, I hadn't heard about him beforehand.
I know who he is. I mean,
there were a couple days where his whole accusation was big, but I haven't heard a lot about that.
Seems to have actually died off a lot.
Yeah, which
good for him, I guess. But
well, one, good for him, and two, that's what usually happens with this sort of thing when the Vic accusations flare up, or when we get anyone else in fandom spaces who turns out to be a predator.
Just sort of kind of dissipates like, a bad odor.
Yeah, what damage is done is done.
Already done,
and it goes and vanishes into the background. So, well, what else happened was conventions started to jump in and pick sides insofar as a lot of them just said, okay, we're not going to have this guy as a guest at the convention anymore.
And even going further than that, even saying if you like him, you are not allowed here either.
Well, so there was one in particular, no, that's Pensacon 2019, that actually stated, hey, if you're at this convention and you show support for Vic Mignogna, or you're wearing a I Stand With Vic t-shirt or whatnot, you're going to be kicked out, and we're going to call the police on you.
Which is completely insane.
It's a waste of law enforcement's time and energy and resources, quite frankly.
I mean,
I think the idea that someone can be sincerely confused or sincerely mistaken about a fact
is a lost art almost.
Is totally gone from the nuance that people, this is not just about individual accusations of bad sexual behavior or criminals.
Nuance in this day and age.
People who, for example, believe certain facts about the Falklands War, people who believe certain facts about global warming, they're automatically evil people to a large swath of society. And it's like, well, they could actually be factually mistaken, and it has nothing to do with what they want to be true or what their ideals are.
You're pointing out if someone can be sincerely
something is a fact. Whether that thing is a fact or not, maybe it's in dispute, maybe it's not really in dispute, but you're going to say that they're good or evil based on whether or not they believe a certain fact is true.
Got a perfect example.
Now, they've probably lived a very different life than you, but it's just very easy to judge people and categorize people. These are automatically, everybody who likes fracking is automatically evil according to.
Okay.
It's like, well, I don't know. Maybe their uncle only managed to keep a job because of fracking. It doesn't necessarily make it the most rigorous heuristic for deciding, the truth or falseness of whether fracking is a net benefit to society. But I'm just saying is they have their reasons, and we live in an era where nobody has time to care about someone else's reasoning, and it's just, are you with Team Vic or are you with my team? And if you like Vic, or if you believe even that there's a possibility that Vic is innocent, you're a despicable human being, and I hope you like get ejected into the sun or something. And it's like, well, no, but really, they believe something which factually may be true or not, but you've made everything about this one thing that they do or don't believe, and someone could have been given a certain story that they then sort of clung to as their explanation for this phenomenon, and you are really just condemning them based on they happen to hear one side of the story first.
A perfect example of that, you hear this all the time, you see it in the news all the time. When somebody says you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, that's actually legally not true.
You can if you had any remote reason to believe that there was a fire. I mean, you could see someone's like camera flash and think that was a fire, and that would, in most cases, excuse you. Although
the thing they cite,
go to the judge and say, "I'm really sorry about that. I messed up."
Right, but let's be real here. The thing they actually cite was actually overturned, like 40 years ago or some shit. But it's still in public conscious, though.
Because it's in public conscious because they've repeated it
to the point where they think it's true, but
they have not repeated this for no reason. It is not a coincidence. Anything that gets repeated before you or before people in pop media, that is probably not there by accident. That is probably someone's design.
Right, and I understand that, but the point I'm actually trying to get across here is that it doesn't make it any more true.
No, but it just
anybody that's like a lawyer
to believe in it.
Yeah, right. Anybody that's a lawyer or studies law or anything could point out that actually that's not true, and yada yada yada, and give off all these, references.
So here's a funny fact, because a lot of people say who are really big activists on, let's say, the issue of climate change, they're like, oh, everybody should be required to study this, or everybody should. I've even heard from actual serious political activists that report to national level committees that they would actually, though it sounds creepy, they would actually love if there was forced re-education. But here's the thing. Even putting aside that forcing people to believe one thing or another is a gross violation of freedom of religion, as well as, practically speaking, you basically have to torture some people into recanting their beliefs. That's completely unworkable.
Well, not only that,
putting all of that aside,
psych
studies have shown that if you give someone an explanation that is not understood, but you give it to them repeatedly, their understanding of the underlying issue does not improve, but their confidence in their understanding improves dramatically. So what you create is not people who are educated about an issue. What you create is people who are just very, very, very confident about their take on an issue, and that has no correlation with how well they actually understand the issue.
Right. Well, there's I think it was some European statesmen or something. They're the only ones I can think of, or California, that would come up with this idea that if you deny the existence of global warming, you should be on par with a Holocaust denier. And you should be treated as such by society.
Well, they have recreated religion, okay? There's no state religion, but are there now things that you are required to believe to be considered a good member of society? You're probably required to believe, for example, that, and these are not from our perspective, from the perspective of most people, these are not onerous requirements. Like, you're required to believe and agree that slavery was bad, that the lynching of blacks and other colored people was bad. This is not like a difficult belief to hold. But if you think about it, it is a little bit like a state religion in that, if you question this, or if you say, well, let's have an objective discussion about whether it was good or bad, people are like, what are you, nuts? Everybody knows it was bad. It's not something that is open to critical discourse. It's just you have to believe that this was bad in order to be a good person. That is a little bit like a state religion. Even though we abolished the idea, we said on paper we didn't want to have a state religion. We didn't want to have a single religion, a single common body of beliefs that we were going to force everyone to believe in. It turns out that even if you extract the religious belief, people just invent new systems of beliefs that they say you have to believe in all of these things or you're not a good person.
Right. And not only that, but you could, again, to pull this out from the bigger picture, as secularization and the decline of religion in Western nations, which is undeniably happening, there's that nature abhors a vacuum. So when that vacuum appears, it needs to be filled with something. And a lot of this is political or causes.
Oh, so there's another element on this that plays out with this particular convention, however.
Oh,
because so you've got a whole bunch of Twitter randos just haranguing these conventions, throwing at them all these allegations against Vic, going through all the stuff he's allegedly done,
photoshopping shit, dude.
Well, that's another element that we're going to talk about, but going through all the stuff he's allegedly done. And what is a convention to do when a whole bunch of potential congoers, they don't know, have decided, hey, we need to, in a semi-concerted effort, or what appears to be not even concerted effort, they're all saying the same thing. They're all making the same statement, and it's all against this one particular person. Are you going to acquiesce to them, or is it going to look like you're not interested in protecting fans from a predator? And the conventions don't have they don't have the past that a publication like A&N does of saying that people are out here but not doing anything about it. And quite frankly, they have a responsibility to protect the people going to their convention. They really have no choice but to say, hey, this guy needs to get gotten the fuck up out of here.
Well, they really have no good choices. I mean, everybody, you have a choice, but it's a non-choice. I agree.
Exactly.
The thing of it is,
now what Pensacon did was wild. There's very obviously an element of the Pensacon leadership, or there's a lack of Pensacon leadership that's allowing them to go buck wild about the Vic thing.
Right. And if you go on the flip side, and if you do let them show up and you do invite them, you're just going to get hounded nonstop.
You're going to get hounded.
But your whole con is now about this one issue, and
it's about one dude.
Bingo.
Well, here's the we live in an era where you can publish, and I use the word publish loosely, but you can, in the past, let's talk about this. In Gutenberg's time, you had to own a clunky and expensive printing press to get the word out to hundreds of people. Now you can go on Twitter, and if you're outraged enough, and if you're articulate enough, or if it's just the mood of the moment, millions of people will see your ramblings, and a lot of them might just accept it without thinking about whether it's true or not. So it's much, much more easy for someone to seize control of, your hard work, your convention or whatever, and make it about this controversy. In the past, that they would have at least had to own a printing press or be good friends with someone who owned a printing press to get the word out to a lot of people to be outraged in concert about this one issue. Basically every idiot with even a mild interest and user-friendly sort of approach to technology can get any batshit dumb, misinformed idea out there. And barring, being like shadow banned and things like that, it can get quite a bit of reach just by using the right hashtag.
And that's especially true when you're gassed up by a major publication like Anime News Network.
Oh yeah, it's the perfect storm. It's not any one thing. It's these things acting in concert. First, it's easy for everybody to say stuff to thousands or even millions of people. Second, there's some leaders at the top who either they want to believe people who make accusations, or they just want to be on the safe side or whatever. Leaders acquiesce and push this story forward. So there's a lot of things that have come together. And third, we live in this environment where again, whether or not you're virtuous, you know, do you believe women who say that they've been raped or molested? Well, I don't know. It kind of depends on the
that's
fact.
kind
Well,
of
no. Then you're not an ally of justice. And it's like,
Right.
well, okay, but statistically, we know that some people make true accusations and some people make false accusations. That's not in doubt. I mean, only the most hardcore activist,
just like Shield Hero,
would deny that some of them are good and true accusations and some of them are false accusations. But the thing of it is, they play a different game now where you are an evil person if you do not believe, if you do not listen and believe.
Yeah, which the most cringy thing about that mantra is that they tried to make it a thing in the atheist community. And it's like...
Well, I have seen an argument about the periodic table of elements where between two students of science where one of the students actually said to the other student, why don't you listen to women? I thought you said you would listen and believe to women. And the guy was like, but this has nothing to do with the female experience versus, you know, the male. The argument there is that the male experience, and she wasn't having any of it. She was like, you're not a good person because I'm saying this is true and you're not believing me.
Let me guess.
Just looked this up and
he's probably just like, no, you're fucking wrong. You know?
So we live, as the politicians or the political analysts would say, in sort of a post-truth environment sometimes, where you have to believe certain things, not because they're true or they can be proven true or false, but because someone will ruin your life or will, make you feel bad, or, you know, something in between, or even try to kill you via swatting, if you don't believe exactly what they believe. And, you know, the differences can be very minor. There's people on, let's say, you know, broadly we would say they were both to the left of the political spectrum, but they disagree on, like, let's say Israel and Palestine, and they're otherwise, you know, they're both socialists or whatever, and they go straight to you're Hitler, no, you're Hitler. And, you know, when we have the revolution, you're going to be the first up against the wall. We're going to shoot you. It's like, this is where discourse is now, guys. This is crazy. But this is where discourse is in society. And of course, you're going to see that in fandom, because again, it doesn't help that fans already had an ability to exaggerate. But now everybody in society is doing it. You're talking about the leaders of conventions sort of maybe collaborating, or even like activist leaders collaborating to get the message out and get hundreds and hundreds of angry fans sending the same message to the leadership of conventions. Sometimes
which is actually probably happening, no doubt.
Sometimes, though, it is not even just that. It is corporate leaders. I could show you several examples of where MasterCard's CEO decided that certain people should just be removed and not get payments, and Square, you know, all of these other payment processors went along with it because nobody wants to have an argument with MasterCard about it. And the interesting thing is they got the wrong people sometimes. They got, for example, there's an academic who studies jihad. He studies radical Islam, and his name. Oh,
I know who.
His name is Robert Spencer. But there's a far right white nationalist activist called Richard Spencer, and some clerk, we think, because MasterCard has been remarkably opaque and has not responded to anyone's queries about this. They cut off Robert Spencer, the respected academic, because they thought he was Richard Spencer. And now Richard Spencer is actually worth millions of dollars and could probably live. I mean, you know, it's probably a pain in the ass to get cut off from credit cards regardless of how rich you are. But I'm assuming if you're worth tens of millions of dollars that you can find a way around, that you can still live your life. But this guy is an academic. He's not rich like Richard Spencer is. So, you know, it was a much bigger hassle for him. And there was no appeals process. This had never happened before. They had not individually singled out people and said, well, this is just a bad person. And, you know, banks will no longer want to deal with you. And you know, payment processors will no longer want to deal with you.
I actually saw this whole thing play out.
Is kind of unheard of in the West.
I saw that whole thing play out.
Communist China will do it. India will do it if they think you're a terrorist or something. But in the West, this is kind of unprecedented. So again, no appeals process. And he's like, hey, I've tried to reach out. I think you got the wrong person.
Right.
Nothing.
I saw that whole thing play out across, I think it was Twitter or Instagram or some shit. I knew exactly as soon as you mentioned the name of the Spencer surname. Yeah.
Here's the thing.
The reason that we have a formal legal process and a judicial system is they are trying to actually see truth and falsehood and make sure that the right people go to jail. Are they perfect? Hell no. Sometimes the wrong people go to jail or even get executed. But does the general public have a better batting average? Absolutely not.
So can I add something?
The general public is even worse, far worse, as far as I could tell. The past 5-10 years are filled with examples. People who found one guy in a grainy photo at the far right, like neo-Nazi group marching in Charlotte, and then they said, "Oh, this beard, based on this beard, this color of beard, these glasses, and this beard, it's this guy who's a professor, way down in Georgia." And actually, he has the receipts to prove that, and the witnesses to prove that he was 500 miles away, and he has no such political leanings. No one could ever find him ever being like neo-Nazi or white nationalist or anything like that. But because his beard looked very similar to this grainy photo of some protester marching, they mobilized hundreds of people to try to get him fired. And it was a whole, the university had to do a whole inquest, and they were like, "Hey, could you prove where you were this weekend?" And he was like, "Yeah, I was taking my wife somewhere for a nice dinner, and we went to this, museum or whatever." And why? And they were like, "Well, we're kind of thinking about firing you based on this whole outrage thing, but if you could prove that you were nowhere near there." And he was like, "What the hell? Is this America?"
VZ,
folks, this is America.
Yeah, I wanted to add something because it's getting late for me, and I'm like trying to not nod off. I wanted to say, what should us, the consumer, do? And in the case of like Funimation, should we just completely, boycott Funimation completely, or for this?
Quite frankly, well, we already know my stance on Funimation.
Yeah, I already had beefs with them well before any of this.
But here's my thing. Listen, and I said this at the beginning. I don't have a dog in this fight with regard to what happens with what happens to Vic Mignogna. And realistically, speaking of the fact that we have a legal system and a judicial system, it's been either rumored or confirmed to some extent that he's seeking legal action against Anime News Network. So again, I don't have any dog in this fight. I don't care if he wins or loses. And quite frankly, if he's guilty of being creepy with fans and he doesn't stop and he's been told to stop, then he needs to be gotten the fuck out of here because he's making people uncomfortable habitually. But I don't really care what happens to what happens to Funimation. I know some people are not buying their products because of this Vic thing. I think they should have stopped buying their products when they started putting out shitty products, but that's me. But hey,
funny, they're doing a cheap, you know how they do cheap re-releases?
Yeah, the save edition.
They're doing a cheap re-release of that Lucky Star Blu-ray. The one I said, the one I bought, I was like, wow, this vid quality is garbage.
I mean, hey, so they've been putting out.
Hang on. This is important. VZ, that's actually been proven that the master actually is like that.
Yeah,
I know that. I know, but I'm just, the reason why I got pissed off is the fact that someone who should have on the Funimation side of production should have said this is not fit for release.
Someone looked at that and said, "Yeah, that's okay." Just like someone looked at the school, the prison school broadcast up and said, "Yeah, that's cool, print it." And someone
we know who that was.
At the fucking someone above him looked at that and said, "Yeah, that's cool, print it." So we know
hey, Mr. Chops.
Yeah, at this point,
here's the Funimation thing. We know Funimation has zero quality control with respect to not allowing their dub writers to go buck wild with their dub scripts. We know Funimation has a particular bent with regard to what fans they will side with if something happens like what happened with Fujoshi Life, where they had to remind people what happened with that. They had a ad campaign going on for Sekaiichi Hatsukoi on social media, where they had their staffers talk about all the weird, quirky Fujoshi stuff they did, and that got dragged by a whole bunch of people who probably don't buy anime, because they were, quote, fetishizing homosexual relationships, unquote. And Funimation was very quick to walk that back and apologize for that whole thing. So we know that they're going to side with those people. So I wish I had put money on this, because I would have won some money, predicting that Funimation would have gotten Vic the fuck up out of there as soon as this particular round of allegations against him really flared up. So we know Funimation isn't a very good company with regards to all those things. So once again, hey, everyone else is late with regard if they're going to boycott Funimation now. And I know I'm not gonna pretend that they're taking a stand for something, because they should have taken a stand years ago, back when they started doing this shit.
Well, at this point, like I said, probably the only thing I'm going to be buying from them is just the rest of Love Live.
To kind of continue on this, did you see me posting something at them? Because they were talking about how harassment is bad, yada yada yada, and then I posted pictures of their actual in-house voice actresses not only harassing people, but saying to go ahead, I don't give a fuck if so and so is harassed, Vic in this case.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, you can't say that and then have your fucking employees doing that.
Yeah, the specific.
Well, now we know why they were using legalese, because they got sat down in front of the company lawyers after that outburst.
Well, it gets better.
I guarantee
it gets better.
I guarantee you they didn't get a sitting down from the company.
It gets better. After I posted that, it got like 100 or more, things and a bunch of stuff on there. But all of a sudden, the thing I responded to was gone. They literally deleted it and then reposted it, so I'm not attached to it.
Wow.
So the specific statement is, everyone, we want to give you an update on the Vic Mignogna situation. Following an investigation, Funimation recast Vic Mignogna in Moro's Mononokean Season 2. Funimation will no longer be engaging with Mignogna in further productions. They go on further to say, part of our core mission is to celebrate the diversity of the anime community and share our love for this genre and its positive impact on all. We do not any kind of harassment or threatening behavior being directed at anyone.
And that's very much like putting up the Nicene Creed in the 1500s, when someone questions whether your organization is full of good people or not. It's just say, oh, we believe what you guys believe.
Yep.
Right, but that's what I responded to.
Exactly
that second one is what I responded to. I wrote, "Are you sure about that?" And I posted, like, I think Jamie Markey just completely losing their shit and talking about, I want his head, I want his balls.
That's the one I was thinking of.
And it's funny at the literal level, but it has nothing to do with the factual details of whether they actually don't believe in harassment. It's just it is our public position that we are against harassment.
Yep.
And that, our actual actions have nothing to do with that, or our actual attitudes have nothing to do with that. But this is our line, and we're sticking to it. This is the party line.
Well, right, but it's funny that.
Oh no, it is funny in a sort of disgusting way, but
no, I'm saying it's funny they deleted that post and reposted it so that my connection to it would be cut.
Like, that is what passes for accountability in the age of PR.
And I'm surprised I didn't get people trying to yell at me about it. It's like, but there's nothing you can say about this that's not going to look like bullshit after you just said that.
It doesn't stop some people, but you most people would say, yeah, there's nothing to say.
Well, the thing is,
that doesn't stop them from merrily continuing on with their lines.
They
just ignore all unpleasant facts.
I didn't even do it. I didn't do it to stick it to Funimation. I did it to entertain everybody else.
No, that's fine. And even if you did do it to stick it to Funimation, it's that's fine too. My take on this whole, I think VZ, you asked like, what do we do? Like, what do you do in the future? Is you have to ask yourself, is this the entertainment you want? Like, do you want incredible levels of purity testing of everyone, or do you want people to be called on the carpet for things that may or may not have happened 15 to 30 years ago? And, is that, of course, that's not the only issue. I'm not telling you to make every purchase or non-purchase about that, but just realize that behavior that is rewarded with a lot of purchases is going to be repeated. That's how corporations roll. And behavior that is punished by you just saying, all right, you know what? I don't really need this DVD. And it's, I'm just not feeling this.
Well, like I said, at this point, I think I'm just going to not do Funimation with the exception of Love Live. So
that's a perfectly fine decision. My point is, I do not look upon the desire to make everybody accountable for rumors and all of this nonsense. I don't desire a world in which I am somehow responsible for reading up on the sexual history of random ass voice actors and determining whether they did or did not do something behind a dumpster 17 years ago. None of this excites me. None of this appeals to me. I don't wish to
let jurisprudence handle that.
And yes, I'm not a professional private detective or judge, and I wish that we would have professionals handle it, and they could determine whether what the facts are. And I don't think that turning every industry into this sort of informal quiz show, you decide the facts.
So some sort of like who was it? Isn't it Fox who has that? We report you.
Well, did Glenn Beck rape and kill a girl in 1990? It was a website for a while, right? Because Fox had this guy Glenn Beck on, and he did this 2 or 3 times in a row, where he would get someone on and then he would try to gotcha them with this ridiculous statement that was the equivalent of something like, "Have you stopped beating your wife?"
Yeah,
and they would be like, "Wait, what? I wait, what?" And there would be no good way. He would phrase it in a way
to where you can't answer it without looking guilty.
You could make that would be coherent with your whole line of questioning is bullshit.
Right.
And so that's why they made this website that said, we haven't had any proof that Glenn Beck didn't torture and kill a girl in 1990.
Right. Just
which was a parody of the way that he used to just jump on people. But he was not the only one, and he now definitely isn't the only one.
Oh no.
Who rolls like this. This is how a lot of people roll now.
You see a lot of Kafka trapping a lot.
Yes, there's even that name for it now, right? Because Kafka wrote these novels where that happens.
The fact is, it encourages a harmful paradigm, which is the reason, twofold reasons why I don't buy Funimation products anymore. One, they've shown me repeatedly that I can't trust them to put out a product I want to buy in the first place. And number two, it would be me buying that product would encourage harmful paradigms, such as going buck wild on the anime dub scripts. Now, if you're asking what the fandom can do on a larger scale, I have the solution. Me, the guy who's always right, has a solution to that. And it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be easy. And it's not going to be glamorous. It's not going to be heroic. You're not going to look like a hero doing it, but you will save a lot of people from being victimized by doing it. You want to know what it is? Gatekeeping. See, here's what happened. We had this whole way back in the day. We had this whole way back in the day when fandom was more in its when fandom and geek culture was more of in its infancy. It was a lot more of a niche than it is now. We had the old guard, I'll call them, who did a lot of things to establish this fandom, and we owe a lot to them. But they were very salty because they had been ostracized from mainstream society, and they were upset about that. So they went to geek culture and fandom culture and whatnot. And what they did was they tried to enforce a paradigm where anyone not like them, not exactly like them, not the straight white male nerd stereotype, was subjected to an unreasonable amount of skepticism when they tried to join in the culture. A lot of this happened with women. This is where we get the fake geek girl paradigm. So when this structure inevitably fell, and when geek culture got to a much larger level, closer to where it is now, we decided, listen, we understand a lot of us have been ostracized. A lot of us have been prevented from being part of mainstream society in many ways. And we have no right to inflict that upon other people. And that's a very good idea. That's a very good mentality to have, because in a lot of ways it prevents this fuck you got mine mentality where, oh, I had to do all this work and I had to be rejected by this, that, and the other people, and you think you can just walk in here and have a good time like I'm having a good time now without doing all this work that I did? Fuck you, got mine. And I'm going to inflict upon you the same, I'm going to artificially inflict upon you the same type of rejection that I had to suffer on my way up here. All right? That's a bad mentality, and it's very good that we defeated that mentality. But what happened was we vilified all types of ostracism. We vilified all types of gatekeeping for any reason, and that's where we get people like Hazukari. Well, realistically, that's how a bunch of bullies ended up in a lot of high positions within the industry. That's where we get the paradigm where if you're in, well, let's say if you say work for ANN, you are likely to hold a particular set of beliefs because there's people in charge that have this idea that, okay, if someone is like me, believes the same thing as me, they must be good. So that the reason that we can get people like Hazukari is because we don't screen people for their the level of commitment to the subculture. We don't screen them for, this person looks like they're into anime, but they also seem to have a lot of they have ulterior
motives.
Not even ulterior motives. They have a lot of takes where they're bullying other people a lot, or they're saying unnecessary things that are negative about other sectors of the family.
They're bringing the drama.
They're doing a whole lot of stuff that really isn't necessary for being a fan of this culture, but does make them look good to a particular sector of this culture. And what I'm saying is, maybe it's time, maybe we should start investigating that. Maybe we should start saying, hey, maybe it should be okay to look at someone whose level of commitment seems to only extend as far as level of commitment to the subculture only seems to extend as far as it directly benefits them. So
I'm going to be brutally honest and very reductive and try to summarize your idea.
People who are willing to do damage to the subculture and people within it if it benefits them. Go ahead.
People take advantage of people who are weak. This is very unfortunate. but this is the rule of social interaction. This is a phenomenon. I'm not endorsing it as a great thing, but I'm saying that it can be noted throughout human history. And so even though it is deeply offensive to say this, basically the fundamental problem is the anime community has for decades been a collection of people who are weak.
Yes.
And so you will get, what does a herd of weak-looking animals attract? It attracts predators. And that's, unfortunately, some of the people who come in with very good intentions, and some of the people who come in are like, wow, these guys have no defenses against my social mojo. I'm going to come in and be a king or a queen, and I'm going to sponge. I'm going to be able to take it for all it's worth. And when you are weak and you want approval from everybody, you are especially vulnerable to that sort of thing. If you are one of the barons or princes of society, if you're part of a group that meets on their yachts and talks about their $50 million corporate mergers, and some random jackass tries to join your group, you're just gonna eject him. You're gonna be like, we don't need you here.
How'd you get on this yacht?
We don't need.
How did you get past the guards?
You have to prove that you're one of us. You have to prove that you belong to this very exclusive group. You have to buy a club, a country club membership. You have to buy a yacht. Whatever it is, they have a filtering mechanism. And
anime fandom doesn't.
What anime fandom talking about?
No.
And that doesn't guarantee that everybody is nice, by the way, because some of the people who hang out on yachts or in country clubs or whatever, some of them are very nice and some of them are complete corporate raider sharks. But it does filter for anybody who can't afford to put down like $500,000 on a corporate, on a country club membership, or to put down the millions to buy and own and operate the yacht. It does filter people out in some way. So at least the normal level of petty riffraff will be kept out by that.
It's filtering for at its core. It's filtering for a level of commitment. So if you're in with Rich Gang, you are committed enough to that particular subculture to spend however much money you need to be part of that subculture. In the anime community and in a lot of geek culture spaces, these barriers to entry don't exist because they've been broken down, and they've been broken down because we started adopting this edict of inclusivity. And let me make myself very clear. What I'm not saying is we need to start excluding women or excluding gay people or whatnot, or all any of that kind of stuff. What I am saying is when the only virtue is inclusivity, when the only virtue in your subculture is how inclusive you are and how many people you can include within whatever you're doing, you are going to kill your subculture. Make no mistake, this will kill whatever subculture you have, because when the only virtue is inclusivity, everything else must be sacrificed to inclusivity, including the core of your subculture, including the history of your subculture, including what the people who built your subculture did to do that.
So anime needs a wall around it.
Build a wall. I think we found our episode title. But
no, man.
In all seriousness, okay, how many problems, like significant problems, have we talked about on this podcast?
Make anime fandom great again?
Well, here's the thing. The piracy thing with regards to how we're now in this era where we're vilifying all the pirates, regardless of the fact that much of this fandom and much of this culture and much of the reason we have a market for anime here in the first place was built off of legally gray piracy activity. How about the people who are coming into the fandom in the past few years who are virulently attacking a lot of the sexuality that's been in the medium for decades.
It's been there longer than they've been alive.
The moe thing. People who are coming in and we hate all this cute girl shit. Why is all this cute girl shit out now when cute girls have dominated anime for decades?
What's great about that is we've actually witnessed in the course of this podcast the tide turn on that. Like, I don't see nearly as much of hatred for that stuff as I used to. I mean, it's still there.
But
it's nowhere near as prominent. Not even close.
Well, to a certain extent, that's been subsumed up in this whole greater, more feministic hatred for sexuality in anime and hatred.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Anime
right. But the thing is I don't see nearly the like, oh, this person likes K-On! or you know, something like that. Like that sort of level of inquisitive zeal seems to be dying down a fair amount.
I think it's more when it's because I notice the places like ANN, they'll praise a show.
They can't afford to make too many enemies at this point.
They'll praise a show like, and don't get me wrong, I love like your camp, laid back camp and such, but they'll praise a show that's like that. That's like, it's fine if it's cute girls, but no fan service, no sexuality.
It's not sexualized.
If it's sexualizing the girls, then that's the bad part.
That's what I'm saying. But I mean, going further with more problems we've talked about on this podcast that can be saved by this paradigm I'm on right now. How about back in the day when there was that whole problem where a few moe fans got really mad when they found out that Kiwani was doing free.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And all of this can be not necessarily 100% solved, but mitigated significantly by screening people for levels of commitment, being willing to screen people for levels of commitment, being willing to say, you seem to be doing a whole lot more complaining than actually liking stuff. Being willing to say, what are you doing in this subculture if you seem to hate everything about this subculture? Or what are you doing here if you're willing to if you're willing to bully other people in this subculture? Like why? What purpose? What would you say you do here?
There is a general phenomenon that
no. I'm just getting an Office Space like flashback. I hope that's what he was referencing.
Oh, that is what I was referencing.
Fantastic.
I thought so too. There is a phenomenon where people will stay at the job that they hate day in and day out for years, and they will bitch about their job, and it's not healthy. It's understandable to some degree that temporarily, while you find a new job, you would stay at your old job. I'm not knocking that, but 5-10 years later, you have the same boss, you have the same job, and you have the exact same complaints. You have failed in some way as a person to create a life that you actually enjoy.
And that's especially troubling when it's not a job, but a fan subculture community about cartoons.
Exactly. Yes.
I've decided that I'm gonna stick around in this cartoon shit, even though it keeps doing stuff I hate, even though it continues to do, even though I don't like a lot of people in it, even though I'm not forced to interact with them, but that's besides the point. But what it comes down to is, listen, and this is me being very serious. This hit piece on Vic Mignogna that I don't really think is going to help anyone. This list definitely isn't going to help anyone. And
it'll foster vigilantism. That's about it.
Even beyond that, like it's not going to get anyone unraped.
Oh,
it's
no.
not going to prevent anyone from.
We're going to stop raping our lifetime.
Well, yeah, no, it's not going to prevent anyone from getting predated upon in the future. What will is if we can adopt at a fandom level.
How's that fixing the rainforest in your
mentality,
lifetime,
well, if we can adopt in our lifetime a mentality on a fandom level where we're willing to say, what are you doing here? What are you doing in this subculture? What like how committed are you if you're willing to victimize other people, and realistically being willing to call out this, not just predatory behavior, but behavior that is indicative of a level of commitment that only extends so far and doesn't extend to what's good for this subculture that we all seem to love so much. We're all passionate enough about anime to want to share it with everyone, but we're not passionate enough about it to want to put up barriers to entry against people who would do the subculture harm and would do tremendous harm to the people within it. And this is 100% serious. This is good. Listen, I've been in the convention scene for a while. I know what goes on behind the scenes on some of these things. I've heard tons of rumors. I've had people I've met who have been victimized by predatory photographers. It's not pretty. And this is something that I'm passionate about preventing. And the way we prevent this is by confronting people and saying, what are you doing? What are you doing here? And being able to look for these warning signs that, hey, some people are faking the funk. Some people are trying to make themselves look good just so they can get what they want and have nothing to contribute back to the subculture, but some stupid bullshit about, oh, this artist posted their lewd picture of whoever, so we're gonna tweet FBI memes at them. Like, what is that person contributing? And if we're willing to call out problem behavior on a bigger scale than, this guy got outed for being a predator, so now let's go for a month, let's go on this huge thing where we're all about calling out people for being predators in fandom spaces, and then it dies off. That's not going to do any lasting help for anyone. The only way we're going to create an environment where this stuff doesn't happen nearly as often as it does now is if we become willing, if we grow a fucking spine and become willing to stand up and say, listen, either you're committed or you're not, but if you're not committed, we're not going to associate with you. Sorry. You appear to me to have only so much commitment that you're willing to profit off of it, or you're willing to get yours off of it, or you're willing to get what you want out of this encounter, but you're not willing to contribute back anything positive. So we're done.
I mean, sometimes you really do just got to point to the gate.
So listen, some of these people should have been.
There's the door.
Yeah. Some of these people should have been stopped at the gate.
Yeah.
And we can, and like I've had people battle me on this. They're like, "Oh, why do you support gatekeeping?" I'm like, "Okay,
that's elitism." Or
okay, what do we do? What do we do with the following? We got Moe fans out here hating on Fujoshi because they don't like when Kyoto Animation makes the boys love anime. We got people out here. We got cosplayers out here doing incredibly catty, just low quality behavior towards other cosplayers for no reason. We got photographers out here trying to steal panty shots. We got people out here actually plying women with alcohol at conventions to have sex with them. What do we do with those people? except stop them at the gate. Like, at some level, we need some gatekeeping, and if we want to stop this kind of thing from happening, and stop it from being, oh, this thing happened, so now let's tumble down the hill again for a week about this whole, oh, about noticing when, okay, we got people in fandom spaces who are predators. Yeah, but you only care about that for a week, and then it's back to whatever else you're doing, which is fine, but you're not a fucking hero. You're not a fucking hero for doing that. Start imposing some standards, please, because this is serious. This isn't fucking how some cartoon shit right now. We're dealing with real people, and we're dealing with real people's lives, and we're dealing with real people getting victimized by other real people in real life. So can we please start actually doing something that'll help those people, and stop everyone trying to be a fucking hero on Twitter, because it's not helping.
Keyboard warriors.
It's not helping anyone. And other people everyone trying to be a hero on Twitter, the ANN people try to be heroes on their own outlet that refused to be heroes back 12 years ago when these allegations were put out against some people who we don't know the names of. So they're out. So for all we know, they're still out here at conventions, still doing untoward things, in the words of the person who wrote that article.
So to bring it all back and kind of create a bit of closure here, I don't know if Vic did anything. He may have not. What I do know is this sort of behavior in terms of these mobs is not going to help. In fact, in many cases, you're just making it harder to actually go to these events.
And again, once again, for the third time, if Vic is guilty of what people are saying he's guilty of,
fine.
And he's
boot him.
Yes, he's out here making people uncomfortable habitually. He needs to be gotten the fuck up out of here, along with everyone else who does that kind of thing habitually and doesn't stop.
However,
that's something to be decided by someone who's not me. What I can decide is, listen, people need to start imposing some standards on a fandom level, because this kind of thing is unsustainable, and this is going to happen more if we don't get some standards on a fandom level that say, hey, are you committed to the community, and does your level of commitment extend beyond what's directly good for you?
I think that's a good place to end it.
That is indeed the show. The email address is ntrradio@gmail.com. The website is ntrradio.net. You can find VZ stuff at vzmk2moemekigatai.wordpress.com. You can also find his book, The Big Book of Idols, at thebigbookofIdols.com.
Print version soon, hopefully.
Print version is coming. We don't have a date yet, is the issue.
Okay. Can I just bring this one issue before we end? Because Drawing Girl in the chat brought up an interesting thing.
Sure. I'll try not to go off on it like I just did.
No, but it's actually interesting. It's actually an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah.
So she wants to know, part of me wonders how much of a problem this was in the anime fandom in the 90s and 2000s, about like sexual predation at cons.
Right.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't going to cons at that point.
I said I don't think that was a thing. Especially like in the 80s and 90s, because one, it was mostly males. If you were female, you were there by proxy of the mail that you were going with, and you were there because you.
I have a slightly different take on this, but go on.
And you were there legitimately to be interested in to see anime, because here's the thing, you were there to literally just trade and buy tapes and to learn and see panels on anime. The medium was so, not the medium, but the way to see and learn anime was so different before like the modern internet, because the way information was, you didn't know if you would ever see that that anime movie that you were going into, so you did everything to be at that little screening room.
There was a level of exclusivity, and you had to.
And let's be real here. The sheer numbers alone would. Everybody fucking knew each other at half these places.
Yeah, it's you had to sort of respect each other in a way, because not a single thing about politics or anything, because that was the only way you were gonna get that damn tape. You were gonna trade that tape that you wanted to see, your rare Yamato movie or whatnot. See Gundam Trilogy on fifth generation tape.
Looks like some fucking bad Hong Kong bootleg.
Yeah, so and with no subtitles.
Of course,
you didn't care. It was like
the picture quality looked like it was filmed out of an asshole or.
Yeah.
But Maury, you had a different take.
So mostly I do agree with the character. The characterization he just gave of the vast majority of fans. I have talked to people who worked, ASEN back in the 90s, or, Anime Expo back in the 90s. And you would occasionally get, like, a woman who came in specifically to have sex with someone. Like, a woman who either wanted to be a groupie, or even, 1 year at ASEN, there was a woman who, like, basically just was seen with a different guy every other hour. And, it's like, but it didn't become a thing where people complained about it. There was an issue of non-consent or predation, because the women came specifically to do that. And so when you have more normal people in a space and they're less sure about why they're there, if someone in the era of laser discs, if someone is there, someone is there to see a very rare show, and like K-Gods was just saying, it looks like it was shot out of someone's ass. They're there because they love the show. They're not there because of some other, I don't know, they're certain they want to be there. Even the women who went there to try to give roses to some actor or actress from Japan and try to jump in their bed, they're at least there with a very specific purpose, and they knew what they were about.
Yeah.
When you
by my terminology, they have a high level of commitment. It's just to a different thing.
When you have the modern, it'll be just like going to the mall or something, you have people who do things with no real purpose, and they're much more likely to either be sort of funneled into someone else's purpose, which might not be good for them.
I just wanted to add, the people
or to
that
have profound regret about what happens.
The people that went to these cons in the old days, a lot of them were late 20s, 30s, older. So the age demographic has changed dramatically, where now it's like,
now it's teenagers that are cosplaying and things, like part of that culture. And yeah, I know exactly. If you've been to a con, you can't help but notice that.
Yeah.
Which you're seeing a strange divide there, though, because you've got the older people there, which I am increasingly becoming. Hey, come on, man. It's true. And then you've got the younger people there that are there, I think, more for almost playtime or something. You know what I mean?
So it's expensive babysitting.
It's, well, no, I don't even want to go.
I don't want to go there. I'm not talking about that young VZ.
But there's
okay, not that. But like,
there's a contingent, and here's what happened with convention culture. It began with people who had a high level of commitment to the medium, and the reason they were there was because you could only get certain things and certain experiences by being at that convention with the people who had what you wanted to see, do, or
and
with convention culture is that culture is still there, but it has also been subsumed. It happens now simultaneously with this other younger fandom culture where it's largely a gathering of fans. It's largely a gathering of friends around a mutually held interest in a place where that interest is rampant and they can do a lot with it and be around a lot more people who are into that thing. And the reason there's a disconnect. It's not babysitting. They're there for a cultural experience. It's just a different cultural experience than the older people there.
Well,
are there for. And the reason there's a disconnect is because, for the most part, the older people have refused to engage with the younger people. That's been a problem for a while.
Well, that's actually not what I was going to say. I was going to say that another problem is just what you pointed out. When the older people there in days of yore, when they were there specifically for that thing. The social aspect was the secondary thing, whereas now it's almost the reverse of that.
Well,
whereas now exactly people go purely for socializing.
That's exactly what I'm saying, though, is the reason people are going there purely for socializing, and the reason that, or to bring it sort of into the realm of what we were just talking about. Why do you see when you get the anime voice actor panel, it's filled, but when you get the actual Japanese guest panel, it's maybe half full? The reason is because it's not so much that the social aspect is taken over. That's the only thing these young people know, and the reason that's the only thing these young people know is because the older people, the old guard, the people who built this community and built the whole convention culture, have refused to engage with the younger people because they think that B came before A. They think that their style of fandom culture isn't a direct result of the more experienced people largely refusing to engage with them, and that's a whole nother problem. And honestly,
that's a whole nother show.
That's a whole nother show. That's some more shit I can get mad at.
That's a good topic for a future.
That's a very good future topic.
We'll put that one in the hat.
Disconnect between the older fandom and the younger fandom, and why
that, we got to.
In the meantime,
okay,
we are indeed wrapping up the show.
Right.
Once again, ntrradio@gmail.com is the email address. ntrradio.net is the website. VZ stuff is vzmk2moemekegatai.wordpress.com and thebigbookofIdols.com. My stuff is at iyashike.moe, where you can also find the shirts at iyashike.moe/store.
We want to thank Morthel for popping in, or Maury, however he wants to be called.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Maury.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. You can find my old columns at animediet.net. We also have a Facebook page where we post amusing anime memes.
Okay, I am on Twitter at TNubis. VZ is on Twitter at VZMK2. KGods is on Twitter at immortal_KGods. Maury is on Twitter at Morithiel, MORITHEIL. Am I correct?
That is perfect.
Outstanding.
He's got to check.
I'm Tom Portionubis.
KGods.
I'm VZ Mark II.
And even though we get stopped at the gate every time we say it, this is NTR Radio.